Welcome to the deep dive for this week. Don't forget to visit the website at deepdiveau.net. Check out our socials and Patreon page at the Deep Dive AU. Subscribe via your favourite podcast app or like and subscribe at our YouTube page at the Deep Dive AU.
This is the Deep Dive Podcast. And here is your host, Michael Coles.
Sarah Langston is the president of the Australian Neurodivergent Parents Association, or ANPA for short. The Australian Neurodivergent Parents Association defends and equips neurodivergent parents in Australia. The association advocates for the right to support, equity and full inclusion of neurodivergent parents and children in line with the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities 2008. The association is focused on ending violence, discrimination, abuse and neglect of neurodivergent parents and their families. We acknowledge that this is gendered and that most harm is done to neurodivergent women and mothers. Sarah Langston, welcome to the Deep Dive.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. So when did the ANPA start and what was the inspiration in starting the association?
So the ANPA started in a kind of a very this decade way. So it actually emerged out of Instagram. So I was kind of toiling away on Instagram doing online advocacy as well as kind of like real world advocacy as well for a couple of years, which was something I took the advocacy work that I was already doing kind of online during COVID. And then I was really talking about my experiences as a neurodivergent parent, as a neurodivergent mother, as a neurodivergent woman, just like openly. And this sort of little community started to gather around my account. And there was just a lot of discussions over a couple of years that happened. And from there, the idea of the ANPA was born, basically. It was like this collective had formed, and I can't remember at what point or who suggested it, but that's where it got its start. And then I think we started to talk about it as being more of a thing, like that we're actually going to start an association probably the start of last year. And then in November, we actually did kind of get ourselves organised, and we incorporated, I think, in November of last year. So we haven't been around that long. We're quite a young organisation, and we are an incorporated association, which means that we are a legal entity. We're like a person under the law, which means that we can do things that neurodivergent people can't do on their own as to advocate. We can do things as a collective, and it just provides more protection, I suppose, and a sense of community and a sense of working together. So that's kind of how it started. And the idea of it is really born from the notion of having a union of parents in a sense. So I was a union. I've always been a member of my union. I'm currently a member of the ASU, the Australian Services Union. Prior to that, when I was teaching, I was a member of United Voice before it changed. It's now amalgamated to something else, but as an early childhood teacher. So, and I grew up in union politics. So I've always had a sense that we're stronger together. When we do things as a collective, we're safer. And I kept seeing these experiences parents were having of advocating alone and being really vulnerable in doing that. And so I really wanted to bring people together. We have so many common experiences. And I kept seeing these experiences, particularly women, particularly neurodivergent mothers, were having over and over and over, advocating for their children and becoming really vulnerable systemically, really getting, picked off by, not people who don't always have their best interests at heart in systems, and being quite targeted. So by advocating for issues that are important to our community as a collective, we are a lot safer than if we do it alone. So it's that sense of standing together.
Okay. So, what is the mission of the Australian Neurodivergent Parents Association? What is their mission, current mission, or perceived mission of the association?
So our mission is to equip and defend neurodivergent parents and their families in Australia, in alignment with the UN CRPD. So our organisation, our constitution is based on the principles of the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities 2008. So we align our work with those principles. So what we are really doing is trying to increase support for neurodivergent families, because there isn't a lot of support, especially for parents. And so that's our mission, is to support our community, and it's a journey. It's going to take time, because we're starting from very little, but we have to start somewhere, and so that's where we're starting. So that's our mission. And we work on issues to do with children. We also work on increasing support for neurodivergent parents. And a really important aspect of that is Article 23 of the UNCRPD, which says that disabled parents have a right to support to parent. And that is our right. And even though you often hear, so I'm studying law. So even though you often hear at law, the saying parents have responsibilities, not rights, this is a little different. If you are a parent who has a disability, you actually do have a right under the UNCRPD to support to parent. And so that's what we are advocating for, is radically increased support for parents, because currently there is basically none.
So, how can neurodivergent parents benefit from joining ANPA, and how much does it actually cost to join?
So there's a few benefits. So it's currently free to join. We will introduce membership fees probably at some point, but not anytime soon. Some of the benefits include like being part of a group, so a place of belonging where other people are neurodivergent, but also understand the parent journey, and that's like a pretty hard mix to find connection around. As far as I'm aware, there are not heaps of parent-based groups for people who are neurodivergent, so it can be a bit hard to find people who understand both aspects of your life. Another benefit is political representation of your interests. So we do a lot of political work. So we've been quite active campaigning against this rise in behaviourist early intervention programs like Inklings. And we've been quite outspoken on that issue, and we continue to be. A big benefit is political representation of our interests as a community. So this is quite important, because a lot of the mainstream advocacy that is happening is often for neurodivergent people who don't also have children, and their needs and lives are quite different to the lives that neurodivergent parents lead, because our families are quite complex. We have intergenerational neurodivergence often. We have a parent who's neurodivergent, and you have children who are neurodivergent. You've got clashing needs often. It's a whole other piece which is really not well understood politically yet. Our families tend to need quite a lot of support, and without, I guess, the voice of lived experience at the table politically, it's very unlikely that the services we need and the accommodations that our families need and the understanding and awareness, it's not going to grow unless we get out there and advocate for it. So in many ways, the ANPA is the voice. Well, I mean, we are at the moment, we are the peak for, even though we're so little and new, we are the peak for neurodivergent parents, I think we're actually the only organisation in the world of our kind. So this is really important because as neurodivergent parents, we are so aware of the ways that we were parented and the ways that we grew up, which were not often great. Very often it's very intergenerational. We have neurodivergent parents as well. So our generation, I would say, is like the first generation of neurodivergent parents who are also cycle breakers. But to do that, we need more support. And to get that support, we have to fight for it. We have to get out there and we have to argue with politicians to say, you need to be providing this to our families so that we can be the best parents that we can be. So it's a big slog. So that political piece is so important. We've definitely had people ask, like, why do the ANPA talk about politics so much? Why do you focus so heavily on that? Because that is the key to getting what our families need to actually survive and maybe thrive. Most of the focus of government is actually on neurodivergent children, but as any parent would know, you can't pour from an empty cup. We need our cup filled up too so that we can parent our children well. And our needs are more than a neurotypical person, a neurotypical parent. So I would say that's a big benefit to joining the ANPA, is being part of something that is trying to actually change the fabric of our lives and having a say in that, being in the driver's seat of that. So coming to meetings, putting your point of view, even if you can't make it to meetings, emailing us, telling us what's important to you. We're about to do our first member survey, things like that. So we are connecting the voices of neurodivergent parents to the people who make the decisions and spend the money that essentially, shapes our lives. Another benefit is that we are going to start having fortnightly socials, which is like no business and it's just hanging out. That's going to be about, making connections with other ND parents, breaking down isolation, which can be a really serious issue for us. Finding friends, finding other people like you who are parenting while neurodivergent. That's really important. And we're also doing other stuff, like we're trying to, make some resources like templates for letters, because some of that executive functioning stuff can be really hard when we're trying to advocate for our kids or ourselves. And we'll be doing some webinars, which are like skill sharing things through the year. So we're going to launch a webinar schedule pretty soon. So we're doing lots of stuff. And of course, an association it reflects its membership. So what we do and how we benefit members will be shaped by who joins, who participates, who gives input. So we will be what the members make us. So some of it's a question mark over time. It will change, it will shift with our membership.
Okay. So how can neurodivergent parents get involved with the ANPA? How do they actually register?
So on our website, we have a how to join link, and it breaks down, it's just bullet points, like you just need to send this information. So you just send us an email with your name, the state you live in, your email address, your phone number, and your access needs to participate. So for instance, if you hate coming to meetings but would like to contribute via surveys or by emailing us or whatever, and also a bit about yourself. So if you want to share anything about your family or your parenting experience, you can. A lot of our members are quite private and don't, feel like they want to share a lot yet, and they need a lot of time to warm up. That is a pretty common disposition. So if people listening to this feel like that, that's actually quite common. Something that I'm starting to encourage people to do is to just come and observe a meeting, just listen, and you don't have to say anything. You don't have to even ask a question. You can just listen in until you feel like okay to participate more. Even if that's all you ever do, that's still participation, that's still joining in. that's how you join, and that's some ways to join in.
So can neurodivergent parents share their experiences on the ANPA website?
Well, this is something that we are looking at doing, because I think this idea that someone brought up recently, and I was like, that's a great idea. We would love to have audio, video, photos, writing. We do have a section which is from right now, but we do have some art we're about to put up. And yes, we experiences, and I think creating some visibility around more of that is needed. So yes, absolutely. If people want to share that, please do, because that would.
So are you guys actually active on social media via Instagram and TikTok?
So when we probably should be. I feel old. But definitely. So our main, I guess, point of connection with the neurodivergent community. We are on Facebook. It's Facebook. Insta is like quite high engagement, and I think also TikTok are like the dopamine slot machine. So that's where you find, especially all the ADHD parents. Yeah, so we're on Insta. We have our website. We mainly use that for political stuff, because as someone who actually, this is wild, politicians actually personally read their tweets, which I Instagram, which is they have staff to manage the other two, but they actually do read their Twitter. So yeah, we use them for different things, but Insta is really where we, I would say, connect with community and have like, and that's also like the heart of the ANPA. That's where we started, and that's where we still. So yeah.
Okay, sounds good. So what types of partnerships does ANPA engage in to support neurodivergent parents at the moment, or is that upcoming?
So yes, this is a big thing. So like political partnerships and stakeholders and working towards there, because you know, a law nerd here, but that is where the change really happens. All is about shaping that, but and you know, also in terms of the partnerships we've been developing, an approach of triage. So looking at what are the most urgent needs of the community, like to our families, and trying to kind of go there for working with the a relationship with DCJ in New South Wales, so child protection, because rate of child removal from our community, from parents from our community. Working towards, it's tricky, like to work with. It's very hard to get in rooms with ministers. They can be quite resistant. But we are trying to have consultation with the head of family, the head of the inclusion directorate at the head social workers in the state. And our goal and our aim, educate them about neurodivergence, educate them about the needs of neurodivergent parents, you know, what common presentations are, especially under stress, because obviously parents who come into contact with them would be at a point of stress, how to support us during like home visits, basically really working on trying to minimize bias, minimize discrimination, minimize stigma increased support so that we can start to really work on dropping the removal rates, because they are quite horrific. I think it's 10 times the national average, which is really, really high. And a lot of that is to do with a lack of support. So that's a really big conversation we're trying to have with government, which is, if you want our kids to stay with us, you need to do a better job of supporting us. And that's a very high level conversation we're having. But I guess in a smaller way, we are also now really trying to, get a foot in the door with some of the other DPOs, so disabled people's organisations, some of the peaks. We are trying to do that in order to share resources a bit. And what we are hoping to do, a really big thing, is to get ourselves funded, get some grants on the table, and start fundraising, because a huge passion, particularly of two of our board members, Emily and Kate, a huge passion is direct practical aid. So there are a lot of ND parents who are living in quite severe poverty because of unmet support needs. A lot of complex factors go into that. But we are hoping to build a fund, which will be called the Rebecca Simpson Solidarity Fund, which is named after a very dear friend of mine who passed away last year. She was known for helping people out when they're in a really tough spot. And so the Solidarity Fund will be primarily to buy noise cancelling headphones for parents who are in crisis, often who are undiagnosed and don't know that they actually are struggling with sensory overload and things like that. So we'll be looking at that kind of help, really practical help for families.
Sounds good. So, sorry, I'll start again. So, what kind of resources do you actually have at the moment, or what is actually coming in the future? Is there any resources that the ANPA can provide?
So at the moment, we're really still building, because our entire board is, we're all single parents and we're all ND and we all have ND kids. So it's slow. But we have created an info pack for social workers, which is basically like a pretty rich information resource, which goes over, and a lot of the resources in that are also useful to neurodivergent parents as well. So there's stuff in there about supported decision making. There's stuff in there about being newly diagnosed. There's stuff in there that is particularly focused on autistic parents, but we'll be expanding to do information packs for all different kinds of neurodivergence. So ADHD, bipolar, schizophrenia, everything that fits under the ND umbrella. So the good thing about these info packs is that if a parent comes into contact with child protection, or even just needs some reading to share with a loved one, or anyone else that's supporting their family or them, this info pack is like a structured guide with links to resources, so that you don't have to spend all that time sifting through and finding things. There's stuff in there around sensory processing needs, information processing needs, all of that stuff. And there's some really specific parenting resources there. Like, for instance, there's a resource about breastfeeding when you're autistic. There's a resource in there about postnatal depression. And we really want to also include more stuff for neurodivergent dads as well, because again, the intersections of gender and parenting and neurodivergent are so complex, and dads who are parenting are going to have different experiences to mums as well. And it's, and then we've got, gender diverse parents as well. So over time, and with the help of our members and the input of our members, we will slowly build up, we hope, a library of resources that can be there. And also, resources for supportive workers, so people in child protection, etc., that parents can direct them to and say, here, look at this so you can understand how I work. So that's some of the stuff that we're doing, and also having that regular social will be a really good I think point of connection and a good resource.
Sounds fantastic. So what are some success stories or testimonials from neurodivergent parents that you've received?
Yeah, look, some really good feedback. We've had quite a lot of parents say, even parents who don't really come to meetings say that even just knowing the ANPA exists makes them feel a bit safer and less kind of alone, because it can be a really lonely experience. We've had quite a few parents who have reviewed the social worker pack say, like, wow, people who've had experience of contact with child protection say, I really wish like something like this had been around when I'd had that experience, and they can really see that it would make a difference to someone now. We've been able to we can't do this too often just because we all work for free. We aren't really funded to do lots of individual advocacy, but we make an exception for if a parent is at immediate risk of removal of their child, because that's such a I guess pointy end of the stick. In that case, we will attend meetings with a parent as a witness to advocate for them, to provide information on what their needs might be and how they can be better supported, and also to provide a lens through which to see that parent that is strengths-based, and so that they are more understood and supported. And I've already seen that make a difference, like parents who are getting quite overwhelmed in meetings, being able to ask for them to have extra time to process, to think and respond, and to ask for questions to be clarified 20 times if they need to be clarified 20 times, because that person does not understand and must be supported to understand before the meeting moves on. So, stuff like that we are doing.
Okay, sounds fantastic. So the last question I've got to ask you, in 30 seconds or less, why should somebody join the ANPA?
To stand in their power, because as neurodivergent parents, we do have legal rights to support, and we do have legal rights to representation, and we actually have a special status to consult to government, to advise government under the UNCRPD. So stand in your power, take up space, stand up and be counted, because you have those rights, so flex them.
Okay, sounds very good. Thank you, Sarah, for joining us on the Deep Dive podcast today. It's been a pleasure interviewing you, and hopefully we'll see you at ANPA sessions in the future.
Yay, awesome. Thank you, Michael, for inviting me on.
For more information about the ANPA, go to the Instagram page, theanpa.org.au. We'll see you next time.